The ancient world speaks of a city paved not with gold but with power derived from it. Rome, at its zenith, was the wealthiest empire humanity had ever known. Its vaults overflowed with silver from conquered mines, its markets buzzed with exotic goods from distant lands. For centuries, this immense concentration of wealth seemed as eternal as the city itself. But if you look for that treasure today, you will find only echoes and ruins. The question, simple yet profound, hangs in the air like dust in a forgotten tomb. Where did all of Rome's wealth go? This is not a story of a single lost treasure chest, but a grand vanishing act performed on an imperial scale. The riches did not simply vanish overnight, instead they were consumed, scattered, transformed, and ultimately dissolved by a series of powerful forces. The mystery begins with the sheer scale of what was lost, monuments so grand they still inspire awe 2 millennia later. Rome's initial path to wealth was paved with the iron of its legions. Each victory brought new lands, new resources, and new sources of revenue. When Roman generals conquered territories, they seized gold mines, confiscated treasuries, and enslaved populations. Beyond conquest, Rome was a master of taxation. Every farmer, merchant, and landowner paid tribute to the central government. Trade was the third pillar of prosperity. Roman ships dominated the Mediterranean, creating a vibrant network that stretched across continents. From Egypt came grain, from India came spices and silk, creating a concentration of wealth unlike anything seen before. The city of Rome itself became a monument to this fortune. For a time it seemed that the fountains of Roman wealth would flow forever, a permanent testament to its divine favor and earthly might. Yet even at its height, the foundations of Rome's economic power were beginning to show cracks. By the 2nd century CE, the empire had reached its maximum territorial extent. With no new wealthy lands to conquer, the massive influx of gold, silver, and slaves from victorious campaigns dried up. The legions, now permanently stationed along thousands of miles of frontier, required constant pay, supplies, and equipment. The military transformed from a source of profit into an enormous expense. As military expenses soared, the burden of taxation grew heavier and more oppressive. Many farmers, unable to pay, were forced to abandon their land or sell it to wealthy aristocrats. Roman emperors began debasing the currency. A silver denarius that was nearly pure under Augustus became little more than bronze with silver wash. This rampant inflation destroyed public trust in currency. Prices skyrocketed and people's savings became worthless. Bartering began to replace cash transactions, causing the sophisticated Roman monetary system to unravel. Rome developed a severe trade imbalance. The upper class had an insatiable appetite for luxury goods the empire could not produce. Silks from China, spices from India, incense from Arabia. To pay for these imports, a constant river of gold and silver flowed out of the empire and into the coffers of foreign merchants. While this trade enriched a few Roman importers, it represented a net loss of precious metals for the wider economy. Every shipment of pepper or bale of silk was paid for with coins that would never return, slowly bleeding the empire of its hard currency. This process hollowed out the rural economy, reduced the number of independent taxpayers, and concentrated wealth into the hands of a tiny elite. The wealthy became tax-exempt while the burden fell on fewer and fewer shoulders. Infrastructure decayed as the state could no longer afford maintenance. The unified economic machine of Rome was breaking into isolated, impoverished pieces. The internal economic sickness left the empire vulnerable to external shocks, which arrived with devastating force. Starting in the 3rd century, Germanic tribes, Goths, Vandals, and Huns began their invasions. These were not just military defeats, they were economic catastrophes. Invading armies plundered cities, destroyed farms, and disrupted trade routes. The sack of Rome by the Visigoths in 410 and again by the Vandals in 455 saw immense portable wealth looted and carried away. Sacred treasures, imperial regalia, and centuries of accumulated wealth disappeared into barbarian hands. Roman rulers often resorted to buying off their enemies, paying enormous subsidies in gold to barbarian chieftains. This appeasement hemorrhaged the state's gold reserves, transferring wealth straight into enemy hands. The gold that once paid Roman legionaries now enriched the very warlords who were dismantling the empire. Each payment weakened Rome while strengthening its enemies. Diocletian formally split the empire in 285 CE into eastern and western halves. The split became permanent after 395, with the east containing the wealthiest provinces. Egypt, the Levant, and Asia Minor remained prosperous under Eastern control. The West was left poorer, rural, and more threatened. It lost its tax base and access to Eastern trade. central authority weakened and infrastructure decayed throughout the Western territories. Roman roads became unsafe and fell into disrepair, aqueducts crumbled, and cities shrank. Artisans and merchants fled the chaos as local economies collapsed. Wealth became localized and privatized. Rich landowners fortified villas into self-sufficient manors. The unified economic machine of Rome had broken into isolated, impoverished pieces. The Roman world was transforming into something entirely different. An empire that had dominated the world for centuries was crumbling, and with it, the greatest concentration of wealth the ancient world had ever known. So in the end, where did all of Rome's wealth truly go? The answer is that it did not go to one place but to many. A significant portion was simply consumed by the voracious appetite of war, melted down to pay for armies and spent on endless conflicts. Another large share was paid out as tribute, a river of gold flowing to placate the very groups dismantling the empire. This wealth helped fund the rise of new Germanic kingdoms built upon Rome's ruins. Much wealth was scattered and privatized. Treasure was hidden away in hoards by frightened citizens. Archaeologists today still uncover these buried pots of coins, frozen moments of panic from a collapsing world. Much wealth was concentrated in the hands of the church, which became a major economic power in the post-Roman world. A substantial amount simply left the empire's borders for good, flowing east along trade routes to India and China. The grandeur of Rome was, in part, exchanged for the scent of spices and the feel of silk. Ultimately, the wealth of Rome never truly vanished. It was transformed. It was beaten into barbarian jewelry, melted into Byzantine coins, buried in English fields, and absorbed into the foundations of the Catholic Church. The great public wealth that had built aqueducts and funded legions dissolved into countless private fortunes. The system that had efficiently concentrated that wealth broke down, and the riches dispersed like water from a shattered vase. And so the question that remains for us today is not just where the gold went, but what lessons can be drawn from the story of an empire that built a world on its riches, only to watch them slip through its fingers like sand. The mystery of Rome's lost wealth teaches us that even the mightiest empires are not immune to the forces of economic change, and that wealth, like empires themselves, is never truly permanent. It flows, transforms, and finds new forms across the centuries.